my name's Julie Kinchin. I'm a Staff Development Manager in an acute care hospital. My job there is to look after the education for all the staff within the hospital. So because of that, I do have a professional interest in how we record nursing and midwifery continuing competence in practice. Therefore, this presentation is focusing on doing that by using digital badges, because I can't find any evidence to say that any other organisations in Australia are using this currently for nurses and midwives or overseas. So it's quite exciting, really. So because of that, it is a proposal that I'm putting forward. That wouldn't it be fantastic if we could have a system where we had evidence of all the different types of competencies and skills that midwives and nurses collated throughout their professional practice as well. This would provide a motivational stimulus. It would be a record that has transnational and international use, also included their soft skills, and it was just a great method of capturing that competency. So let's look and see how we can do that. So introducing digital badges. These are basically a new type of credentialing system that some businesses and learning organisations around the world are using. It's an online record of achievements. Each badge has metadata encoded into them. This metadata includes all the information about the badge, like who issued it, the issuer date, when it expires, and the criteria and the evidence that had to be met to actually achieve that badge. So badges earned from a multitude of skills, and you can also apply them to existing learning and teaching scenarios with relative ease. Any point in time, those badges can be accessed, and you can assess the value. So there is a visual representation of those achievements. There is a link to gamification here because it is a reward system. So in other words, people are wanting to gain badges. But that's good because I can also link it to motivation. So currently, nurses and midwives in Australia have to record their CPD on an annual basis. It's only recorded in the hours gained, and there isn't really any clear direction from the board in what actually constitutes CPD, other than the fact that it does need to be relevant to the context of their practice and meet the minimum requirements. Research indicates that health professionals are aware of the need to maintain their CPD, but how they manage their accountability to the board is another matter, and there is confusion about what to actually record. So what are we looking for? Again, there is a lack of consensus as to how and what are the indicators of competence and how they should be measured. They do recognise, though, that it doesn't only include technical skills, but it also includes attitudes about and your professional practice. It would be really advantageous to know what was behind a competency because they vary enormously. So what actually makes up, what do you have to do to achieve that competency to demonstrate that you have that skill and knowledge? Because in healthcare, as in many industries around the world, things are changing at a constant rate and we're always having to learn new things. There's massive competence variation in nursing. In fact, it is quite phenomenal. It varies very much in the practice setting. You could have primary, remote, regional, metropolitan, and because of this, the tracking of what actually constitutes evidence of ongoing competency has very little formal measurement. So badges for healthcare professionals could be a representation of their individual accomplishments, all their competencies, their skills, and these in turn could be linked through the various specialty areas that they're working in. Here I've got a slide about the types of environments that nurses and midwives learn in. Stuart Hayes talks about how we need to rethink the way we learn, and he's coined the word heutagogy, which is really about your agenda, not mine, and we need to consider how we learn. When considering this and comparing it to the example on the screen, there are so many facets to learning that we need to encourage. We need to encourage learning how to learn as well. So here I've got, this all links very closely to connectivism, and you can see it's informal learning, formal learning, non-formal learning. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we had a system that actually captured all those concepts of the learning environment that they're involved in? I've got an example here of two nurses, and this really happened in the hospital. We had a nurse that designed an information booklet for paediatric patients. It was fantastic. Once she designed it all, she then ran an education session on it. Now, from a CPD perspective, the nurse that designed the booklet would record that she had attained 15 hours of CPD. The nurse that actually attended the information session would record that she or he had achieved 1 hour of CPD. Obviously, there's the variation there in the hours that they've achieved, but what actually isn't captured is all the skills that Nurse A used to actually create that education booklet for the patients, which was really quite fantastic. If we had the digital badges, it would be one way of locking down those skills. Because what we want to do is capture that learning path, have a system that tracks all types of new learning and their environments. In this ideal world, this learning world, we could be connected across formal and informal learning contexts, and you could discover relevant opportunities and craft your own learning pathways at your own pace, based on your interests and your styles as well. It's a potential to create an environment that drives learner engagement as well. So emerging environments for learning, this is what this most definitely is. Mozilla have the Open Digital Badge ecosystem, and this is free software for badges, and this is supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Organisations can access this software to develop their own badges because it's Mozilla's intention to create an ecosystem of open badges that are not only used in specific areas, but are transnational and international. The aim is that the consequent skills and achievements behind each badge are open and usable to all parties. Some organisations have their own digital badges which are not open but are not able to be shared across communities, so that would be the disadvantage with those. Mozilla Open Badge infrastructure hasn't really caught the newspaper headlines like MOOCs have, but potentially as great, if not greater, game changer for higher education as MOOCs. This is what digital badges are recognised to be. It's been considered that they're a very novel approach to legitimise informal learning experiences, and that badge work is built around the general consensus that learning looks different than seat times today. Well, not everybody's sitting in the classroom on their bottoms learning. You learn in lots of different ways as well. Badges can also be for motivation in addition to the assessment, so they really are quite forward-thinking. We also have a potential here to create these open badges for nurses and midwives that have a more comprehensive information than a traditional certificate of achievement. So a clinical competency assessment has multiple components to it. When the nurse has actually finished that competency assessment, it's a sheet of paper saying that they have achieved that competency assessment. What does it actually mean? The badge could identify all those competencies. It could be hierarchical, and they can be earned in sequence as well. They need to have a certain amount of flexibility. We hope then to endeavour to create learner engagement, because badges have the potential to increase the effectiveness of learning and development by promoting a greater interest, role ownership and commitment as they receive those badges. Badges would need validation just like our certificates do and our diplomas and our degrees that they do nowadays. Currently there's only certain schools and facilities that are issuing the credentialing, accrediting bodies, and it may well need to be the same with the digital badge system as well. Open badges are meant to be globally relevant credentialing system. Australian nursing and midwifery qualifications are recognised internationally. Imagine how fantastic it would be if the record of continuing competence had the trans-international scope too, so they could take that with them. On top of that, we could also endorse the badges. This would put an extra layer of trust. You could have URLs linked into the metadata, and they could be linked to certain standards, national standards, for example, competency frameworks and professional organisation. Obviously, there would need to be reflection there because some of that would limit it from an international perspective, but not from a national perspective. It would also be very advantageous for licensing and regulatory bodies to see the scope of competency that particular nurse had achieved as well. So I've got an example here. So badge issuers could be any of those three on the screen. You have the earner, and it's Mozilla that have created this badge backpack. So it's an electronic backpack where the person would store their badges earned. They could then have their layers of endorsement on top of those badges, and you could actually display them on all your different sites. So you've got that electronic visible data sort of ready at a touch of a button, so you can see all the competencies and skills that person has already achieved. And every single nurse in Australia, and there's over 300,000 nurses, already have a page on the nursing board, so they already have their own site where they could actually log on and have all that information. So there's huge potential there to do that. So where to from here? Most definitely those flat bits of certificates. I've got a Bachelor of Health Science. What does it mean? If I actually take that piece of paper to an employer, what are all the components that actually gain me to achieve that Bachelor of Health Science? Whereas with the badges, you could actually have all those different learning types associated with it as well. So there's far more information to employers rather than a one-size-fits-all. Some of the badges are going to fail at first, and some consider that the badges will run the risk of the gamification of education. So just imagine organising all your credentials into groups, representing a larger body of skills, so much as a sequence of college courses that add up to a major. So it's quite exciting, really. So where will the future take us with open digital badges for nursing and midwifery practice? Can this extend to all healthcare professionals? We know healthcare organisations have to ensure public safety and health professional registration through maintaining employee competencies. We know learner control and freedom is integral to the 21st century. We know learning is changing before our eyes. We also know that learning is building networks of information, contacts and resources that are applied to real problems. There is now intense pressure to demonstrate effective learning outcomes in chosen learning and development initiatives. We want to create the optimal learning environment, and we know CPD is central to improving healthcare practice, not just for a tool for implementing knowledge, but also for safe healthcare for Australians as well. So as a healthcare professional myself, I will be very interested in pursuing this potential path to capture nursing and midwifery continuing competency. Because as in the words of Doug Belshaw, the thing is that we don't need to decide the outcome and choose a side on this one. We can choose if we wish to suspend judgment and explore. So let's explore. Thank you for listening.